Sean here with BaseMint Comics. It is not New Comic Book Wednesday. It's not the weekend, so this isn't a Corner Box Classics. What this is number one, George Perez's birthday. And that's why I'm wearing an Avengers Hawaiian shirt in honor of the great George Perez. Because if you ever met him at a convention, he wore very lovely Hawaiian shirts. But why I'm actually doing this is because I watched a video a few days ago by the great Docs Comics, and he talked about clear backing boards. And I was like, I've been in the room tour that I did about 40 videos ago. In the video, I mentioned that like when I initially set this all up, when we moved into this house and I set this particular room up, because in our old house, it was like X-Men in one room and the rest of the Marvel Universe in another. Here, everything like art-wise, everything that I'd got commissioned was X-Men themed, because that's my jam. And the rest of like, you know, the Marvel Universe, I love it all. But it all sort of comes in second place to the X-Men. And I kind of lamented the fact where I was like, oh, you know, and this all came about during a time period where I was like doing a ginormous X-Men read where everything was being read in story order. You know, I built this huge spreadsheet. We've talked about it if you're familiar with the videos. And I was kind of lamenting the fact that like I didn't have much Avengers artwork or Spider-Man artwork up in the house and so on and so forth. And so I have spent... This is one of those moments where I realized that I am a dad, and because I used to, like, I'd get an idea in my head of like, oh, I'm gonna rearrange this entire space, and I would just do it. I'd just throw on some records, and you know, my wife would be like, I'm gonna go watch some TV and I'll see you in a few days, and I would just hop to it. But now, you know, I got a little guy who wants to come down here and he wants to tear Legos apart, and like every 10 seconds as I might be trying to organize something, he's like, hey Dad, check this out. And I'm not gonna be like, no, I'm gonna be like, please show me this contraption you have built out of Lego. I am highly invested. So it's been taking me more time than I am used to. I moved like, all of this stuff is still X-Men. This is like the thing that I stand on, the little comic book island with the long boxes, is still like your Marvel titles, your Marvel fanfare, Team Up, Strange Tales, Tales of Suspense, all that type of stuff. Avengers over there, Captain America and Iron Man behind me. In my office is the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man, Hulk, etc., etc. Anyways, I'm gonna do another room tour at some point and show all of the changes off. But in the process of this, I've been doing a very big, like, I'm kind of finally, now that I'm like taking some time and it's not just like, oh, I'm gonna do this over a weekend, I've been changing some things up and doing some things that I've always wanted to do but kind of delayed myself on, things that are gonna help out stuff like Corner Box Classics. And there have been some new advancements in comic book collecting that have thoroughly like tickled my fancy. Back when I was a kid, first got into comics, I had what was, a hand-me-down from my older brother, trundle bed. And trundle bed is like a bed with another bed underneath it that you could pull out. And my brother had like, not an RC, like the remote control car track thing. Like the little, like, yeah, the little, like, gun thing that would make he had that under there. There was no bed under there. And so when I inherited the bed, I was like, let's get this whole thing out of there, because the bed was the perfect height to fit long boxes underneath. And so I could have all of my long boxes of comic books and all of my Tupperware containers full of my X-Men and Marvel superhero toys under the bed, and it was great. And every year or so I would do this, like what I dubbed the great Marvel reorganization, where I would pull all of my comics out, get myself a Fago, and go to town on rebagging and boarding. And that has basically gone by the wayside because I have moved all of my comics into Mylars over the year. So because I don't want to have to do, like, that used to be a blast when I was a kid and I had like 3 long boxes of comics, but now I have 17,000 Marvel comics, and that's a lot. And I don't want to have to rebag and board them all the time. It is what it is. But one of the things that I got into was, obviously in the bookcases back here, it's all, and so it's single issue comics, right? Just stood up and kind of, and each one of those, I would wager is about a long box or a short box. And in that, like, what I did was I took, you know, you got the labels, and I took one of these things, which here I have the full one with the Marvel Fanfare label, and I just cut it so that it was comic book size, so the little tab sticks out so I can see it. I double-sided them, and these little things are awesome. Got them at Blind Science, and then there's another guy that I buy comics off of at local shows that I really dig. And so what I've done, and this is where, like, we get into the, let's get to know Sean a little bit more. So this wall that I stand in front of is Uncanny X-Men 1963, and it goes all the way through the X books until 2000 down there, which I think, if I'm looking at the camera, is one row too low. I've got the camera set a little too high. But it's basically Uncanny X-Men through Extreme X-Men when that was released in early 2000. And this actually made me, like, the other day when I did this, when I was like shuffling everything around and kind of putting everything in what I'm basically referring to as the Corner Box Classics order, because before there I had everything in publication date order, and mini-series were mixed in, one-shots were mixed in, like, so you had to know, like, if you were like, oh, I want to read Firestar #2, I needed to know that Firestar 2 came before Uncanny X-Men 174, and then Firestar 3 went after Uncanny X-Men 174. And this was great for reading it in a story order when I was doing that. But it was horrible as my memory goes, because it turned into, like, I can't find this thing, and it's way too easy on our phones to just be like, let me go to eBay and buy this thing that I already own again. And so I was like, those days are done. And so what I did was, for miniseries and one-shots, for every Marvel title, so everything that's on the walls is like complete series, and they've got to be longer than a certain, it's hilarious, like, so the 90s, 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s is all great with everything, and then you get to the 2000s where everything starts to get shaky and there's renumbering every 15 issues, and that's where I was like, there has to be a certain, I set a rule where I was like, there's got to be a certain amount of issues for it to be able to go on the wall, otherwise it's in a short box put in cubbies. And then what I did with those was, this is where my madness goes crazy, they are not in alphabetical order, they are in publication date order. So, and then what I did was, like, this is the magic, like, I'm not gonna do the sticky things for every mini series because that's crazy and expensive. I just 2 backer boards and I make these little things, but I also put the issue numbers on them and the dates that they were released, because that's me, and then I like that. So this is what I've been doing for all of the X books. I've been, you know, mini-series and one-shots, small solo series have been being put in boxes. It's the same thing with the Avengers. It's the same thing with Fantastic Four. It's the same thing with Spider-Man. Lengthy, complete runs get the shelf space, and mini-series and one-shots into short boxes, into Calyx cubes. So then I'm like, I'm going through this and I'm like, this is great. I'm knocking everything out. I'm getting everything organized the way that I wanted to. My backer boards tend to have a ton of information that I put on them. You know, date the issue was released, story title, anything that I need to know, like if this Fantastic Four issue continues into thing number 8 from 1985, I need to know that, so I write that on there. It'd be like stores that I bought it, dealers that I bought it, you know, what the weather was like, what I had for dinner, what music I was listening to, whatever, just, you know, stuff that I care about. And so, 9 minutes into this, the other day, I was watching Doc's Comics, and he did a video on these clear backing boards, and I'd heard like grumblings that this was a thing, but he like legit busted them out, showed them, and I was like, sold. Like, I'm already in the midst of this huge, like, let me reorganize this so that when I die, it's super easy for someone to come in here and be like, this is what this is, and you know, mostly my family or whatever, and figure out what to do with it. So I was like, yeah, sold 100%. I'm gonna go out and buy it. And I didn't keep any of the packages closed. I've already put them away, but I got a few coming 25 sets. I bought, or 25 boards package. I picked up 3, got them sent out, and I have been like, this was revolutionary to me. You know, clear boards. It's so they're thicker, which is nice because I was like, I've heard, which I'm sure there are certain people who probably look at me like, you put everything in Mylar, that's insane. And it is. I mean, I buy them in bulk, and I've just been doing that for a couple years now, probably 10. And it works for me. Everything looks great, even if the book is beat to hell. I don't want my books to be falling apart, but I'm not a huge condition guy. Like, I'm not like everything else. I read all of my comics. They are not art pieces to be slabbed and hung in a museum. I love them. I read them. But I was like, hey, this, you know, these stay better. So I started to bust out the clear boards. First one that I put in was this Uncanny X-Men 275, because this was the first gatefold cover that I, back in my mom's Saturn, stopped at a Subway for lunch. This, like, it's on Ann Arbor Road. I know far too much about, but look at how good that looks. And technically, I think it was this one that I got, because this is the second printing with the gold X-Men, just, it's glorious. And so most of the wraparound covers tend to be anniversary issues. And so I was like, okay, well, it's good that they're thicker. It feels like it's like 2 or 3 regular backing boards kind of tossed together. And I was like, well, that's nice, because a lot of these things now are, you know, oversized or anniversary issues. And so it was cool that, like, you know, there's some heft to it. And so then I was just like, oh man, what's the criteria here? And I was like, well, it's got to be wraparound covers, right? There's no point in like just a regular old cover. And so I started like figuring out what my wraparound covers were that I had. And then I started like I said, when I did this wall, and this was like 1963 to 2000, if you've spent much time on the channel, you know, my mother passed away when I was in high school. And it was weird. I got kind of emotional when I put this wall together, because I was like, that's like this point of the X-Men is like when I got into it. And so all of this is like my mom being around, and I got weirdly like not weirdly, I mean, you know, I realized that, like, as much as I love now in comics, as much as I love going to the store with my kid, like that, this right here is, and that, you know, there's other pockets of this time period in the room with Fantastic Four and Spider-Man and Avengers, you know, but this is a good representation of like, man, that is the dragon that I chase. So when it came to the clear boards, I was like, dang, it's about $30 for a pack of 25, which, you know, I'm not putting every single comic I own. That's crazy. But I was like, wraparound covers I can do. And then I was like, man, these would be great. I know there's a lot of, like, I see the TikTok kids out there, and I know that, like, they're getting their 72 variants of whatever, and most of those are wraparound covers. So I highly recommend them for that group. Like, go nuts. But for me, I was like, I don't really, like, there's wraparound covers that I have from this year where I'm like, I don't care. Like, and I don't mean to be like, I still like the books, but I was like, I think I'm just gonna stick to this era. And like the 90s were definitely a time for wraparound and foil, and so all this hit like kind of a sweet spot from my youth where I was like, that's perfect. I don't need to get one for like Spider-Man 1000. Especially not that A cover, because it's terrible. But I was like, let me think here. And so for the 80s, I went through, like Phoenix, The Untold Story. It's John Byrne, and like I want to be able to see this, and it just looks great. And like the X-Men and Alpha Flight series, this great Incredible Hulk versus Wolverine from the 80s, because I'm never going to be able to afford the stupid price of Incredible Hulk number 181. New Mutants Special Edition. I mean, who doesn't want Art Adams art in a cool wraparound cover? And then for the 90s stuff, I was like, obviously, Uncanny X-Men 275, Uncanny X-Men 281, signed by John Byrne, with the gold team. X-Men Alpha. It's just, I know the glare is terrible, but you're going to have to deal with it, because that's the X-Men Omega. X-Men Prime, this great Brian Hitch cover when they came back from the Age of Apocalypse. X-Men Onslaught. Onslaught Marvel Universe. Uncanny X-Men 350. So much foil from my youth. I'm not going to show off every single one of these because there is a lot. But the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, I go on and on about this all of the time, and they're connecting covers that is fantastic. And I have these in one of the spinner rack at all times because I refuse, like, this is the Marvel Universe Bible. I don't need to go to Wikipedia. I have the Ohatmu. And I needed those to have, like, come on. Look at those back cut. Look at that Beta Ray Bill. So those were perfect for this. Two events that I loved, absolutely loved from when I was a kid, was the Fatal Attraction storyline celebrating 30 years of the X-Men. And those have fantastic wraparound covers. And it's so nice to just, because like the only time I would see this is if I pull it out and read it, which let me tell you, happens often. I reread stuff all the time. But it's just nice to be able to like, oh man, look at all those John Romita Jr. heads. And then another one that I dearly love from my youth is the Phalanx Covenant series, and those have fantastic like wraparound covers. And so I was like, I gotta have these in the clear boards. X-Force #1, not the greatest art, but you know, this definitely harkens back to my childhood, that's for sure. Excalibur #100. This great Greg and Tim Hildebrandt and Andy Kubert Wolverine cover, which I absolutely love. This is just a magazine that was a preview thing with interviews and stuff when Generation X first came out, but man, I read the hell out of this thing. I love Generation X and was happy to be able to put that as well as that into one of these. Speaking of George Perez, on his birthday, why would you deny yourself being able to easily see that other half of the cover? Same thing with this issue 12. And it's Mark Bagley drawn Thunderbolt's counterpart. Great final issue of Fantastic Four Volume 1. First issue of Fantastic Four Volume 3. And then for modern stuff, I absolutely loved this Avengers No Surrender series. I just wanted to show those off because I was like, everybody's going to think I'm just showing off X-Men books, which, you know, I do a lot. And speaking of X-Men books, I mean, X-Men #1, signed by Jim Lee. The wraparound cover that folds out and folds out. A couple copies of them. And then this was where I was like, man, because there's like this foil anniversary of that one, and Scott and Jean's wedding. other anniversary issues of the X-Men, and I was like, this is perfect. But the one that got me, where I was like, I'm sticking with wraparound covers. But then this got me. As I was pulling out the regular A covers of X-Men #1, I pulled out, obviously, you know, the whole fold-out set, right? And I couldn't cover this up. Like, I was like, I'm not going to do this for just regular ads, but this cover with this ad for X-Men action figures, if this isn't like the time capsule of me getting hooked on comics, I don't know what is. Like, this is my Indiana Jones, this belongs in a museum. 5th grade playground, like seeing this, immediately begging my mother to take me to a store to get one of them. Like, so everything's in a wraparound cover except for these, because I absolutely wanted to see this every time that I pull up this issue, because that is like, I am pedaling my bike up to the store to pull X-Men action figures off the racks and pick up early X-Men back issues that were held, like my childhood comic book store that I would bike up to. I'm blaring Lives Throwing Copper album, which I have on cassette still hanging up over there, over an original piece of art from Uncanny X-Men. It was the first album I bought on cassette. Like blaring that record in my headphones, pedaling through the streets of my small little town up to my comic book store, and they had all of their X-Men back issues, because that was like the hot book, obviously, when I was a kid. They were behind the counter, so I would have to like stand there and like wait for one of the like comic book guys to acknowledge my tiny existence, because I'm sure they didn't take me seriously, but I had wads of lawn mowing money burning a hole in my pocket that those dudes didn't know anything about, because they underestimated my ability to raise comic book scratch as a kid. So then they let me behind the counter, and I pour over back issues, and look at what happened. So yeah, so thanks Doc's Comics for hipping me to clear comic book boards, because holy smokes, if I'm not going to stare at this for the next hour. Look at it. So friggin' cool. So I had to laugh, because I'm like, every time that I think, I'm like, oh man, I got this Goldilocks just right, they come along and they're like, hey man, clear backing boards. And I'm like, fuck, they got me again with this newfangled gizmos and gadgets. So there we are. That's what's happening. I am done, and I wanted to show some of these off so I could put them away. Except for this one, because I'm going to stare at this for far too long. So yeah, so hopefully you can't hear the air conditioning pumping in, because it is ridiculously hot out there. We're gonna, my man Hank, still recovering, doing pretty good. Has not been on the bike, so tomorrow is going to be our first adventure in biking with him. Probably gonna look weird, because I'm probably gonna put something around him to cover up where the incisions were, so that he's not like, you know, we hit a couple. But hey, it's fine. He's been running around like crazy. He doesn't even know. You can tell by Cyclops' visor that we're down here, so it's time for me to wrap it up. So that is Crystal Clear boards. No, you know, if you've got some kick-ass wraparound covers, I would suggest picking up a few of these, because it's pretty cool. It's so dumb. It's so dumb, but I don't care. It's awesome looking, and you know, makes me happy. And I do love a good reorganization and a reason to pull things off. And you know, it's like I got no interest in flipping, selling, what the value is of any of this. I like reading, and I do love reorganizing it and just, pulling them off the shelves, lining them up, having myself an Orange Crush, listening to some records, looking at all the cool stuff. Takes forever because I'm like, let me open this up, flip through it. Oh my God, look at these Paul Smith pencils. And then it's, the day is gone, but it was a good day. So that's what that's look at it. All right. I'm going to go organize these tomorrow. I'm going to put these away. And it's going to be a blast. And then I will see you tomorrow for New Comic Book Wednesday. Oh man, I'm super excited about it. It's Avengers Armageddon. And I'm like, I was jazzed for I don't want to be one of those guys that's like, I didn't like any of Marvel's events. I liked Blood Hunt. I thought the way that it ended was cool. Anyways, I liked One World Under Doom, but I'm very excited for Avengers Armageddon. I'm jazzed for Chip Zdarsky to be writing an event, and I'm gonna have to make sure that we're gonna try to skate out of here early tomorrow to beat like the 101 degree heat index temps that they're talking about in the afternoon, because I don't want to cook the little guy. We'll just pedal real fast to get a good breeze going. All right, so I'll see you tomorrow for New Comic Book Wednesday. Thanks for indulging me in just like, look at those. Look at how many of you. I know. There's a bunch of you who are like, get back to the '80s comic book, kids. I've stuck to the Corner Box Classics things. I'm still in '82. But I'm a comic book child of the 90s, so I needed to show off some of the chromium and foil, and, I'll be back. New comics tomorrow. Comics from August 10th, 1982, this weekend. It's going to be great. All right, thanks, and I'll see you on New Comic Book Wednesday. Bye.